You are ignoring the most important investor you will ever have in your entire life, and I can prove it to you with one uncomfortable sentence that might completely change how you see your job forever. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, thousands of dollars are deposited into your bank account by someone who expects nothing back except your time and your attention, and instead of recognizing that as capital being injected into your life, you treat it like random spending money that disappears on food delivery, subscriptions, and things you barely remember buying a month later. My name is Master Oink, and for years I've watched ordinary people accidentally build wealth without realizing they were doing anything special, simply because they understood one idea that most workers completely miss, and that idea is this: your job is not just a paycheck, your job is an investor funding your future, and once you start seeing it that way, the entire game changes. Because here's the truth nobody explains clearly. Your employer isn't just paying you for labor. They are operating like a private equity firm, and you are the business they're investing in, and the terms they offer you are so absurdly generous that if Silicon Valley founders saw them written on a term sheet, they would sign immediately without negotiating. But you clicked accept during onboarding while half asleep and never looked at it again. Let's talk about the most obvious example of free capital that people somehow still ignore every single year: the retirement match. Your company says that if you invest a small percentage of your own salary, they will match it dollar for dollar up to a limit. Think about what that actually means. The second your money goes in, it doubles. Instantly. No risk, no waiting, no market fluctuations required. That is a guaranteed 100% return the moment you participate. There is no hedge fund manager on earth who can promise that. There is no crypto strategy, no day trading system, no real estate hack that guarantees your money doubles the second you invest it. If someone claimed they could, you'd assume it was a scam. But when your employer offers it, people shrug and say they'll do it later. And here's the part that blows my mind. A massive number of employees don't even contribute enough to get the full match. They are literally declining free money because they feel broke. That's like refusing someone who wants to double your cash because you're trying to save cash. The logic collapses the second you look at it closely. When you skip that match, you're not just missing extra dollars. You're rejecting an investor who is trying to fund your escape plan. Imagine starting a business and someone walks up to you and says, "For every dollar you put in, I'll put in $1 too." No ownership, no control, no strings attached. You would sign so fast your hand would cramp. That's exactly what your retirement match is, and most people ghost that deal. But it gets better, or worse, depending on whether you've been paying attention. Because the health savings account might be one of the most powerful legal tax shelters ever created, and almost nobody uses it strategically. The money goes in before taxes. It grows without taxes. And when you use it for medical expenses, it comes out tax-free. 3 layers of protection. Triple tax advantage. It's basically a cheat code hidden inside your benefits package. Yet people treat it like a tiny wallet for copays and band-aids. They're using a rocket ship to drive down the street. The smarter play is to max it out, invest it, leave it alone for decades, pay small expenses out of pocket, and let that account quietly compound until one day you wake up with a massive pile of tax-free money waiting for you while everyone else is paying taxes on their retirement withdrawals. And we haven't even touched education benefits yet. A shocking number of companies will literally pay thousands of dollars every year for you to learn new skills, get certifications, or even complete degrees, not because they're being nice, but because skilled workers create more value. But here's what they don't say out loud. Those skills belong to you, not them. They're portable. You can take them anywhere. That's not a perk. That's a grant. In the startup world, founders fight like crazy to get grants because it's money you don't have to repay and equity you don't have to give away. Meanwhile, your employer is offering you thousands for personal development, and you don't even fill out the form because it feels like paperwork. Think about that. If your company offers $5,000 a year for education and you ignore it for 5 years, you didn't just lose convenience. You left $25,000 on the table. That's not pocket change. That's a down payment. That's an investment account. That's momentum you threw away. Now zoom out for a second because the benefits are just the surface level stuff. The real shift happens when you understand what your salary actually represents. Your paycheck is not the reward. Your paycheck is the funding. It's seed capital for you incorporated. Every successful business needs initial money to create returns. Real estate investors need down payments. Stock investors need capital to compound. Entrepreneurs need runway to build something meaningful. So where does your capital come from? For most people, it comes from their job. Your 9-to-5 is not the investment. Your 9-to-5 is the investor. And when you finally see it that way, everything changes. You stop treating your salary like spending money and start treating it like fuel. You stop complaining about the job and start extracting value from it. You stop acting like an employee and start acting like a strategist. Because the people who actually build wealth aren't the ones who quit their jobs chasing some fantasy of instant freedom. They're the ones who quietly squeeze every dollar, every benefit, every match, every reimbursement, and then deploy that capital into assets that pay them back. Meanwhile, everyone else just spends their paycheck and wonders why they feel stuck. You're basically running a business that refuses investment money and then complaining that the business isn't growing. Of course it isn't. You keep rejecting funding. Most people treat their employer like an ATM. They show up, withdraw the base salary, and walk away. Smart people treat their employer like venture capital. They extract everything available: retirement match, tax advantages, education grants, insurance protection, networking opportunities, paid time, stability. It's all capital if you look at it correctly. Let me put numbers on this so it feels real. If you earn $80,000 and your benefits package is worth 30% on top, that's $24,000 of extra value every year sitting in different buckets. Retirement contributions, health subsidies, learning budgets, wellness reimbursements. Most people only use half of it. Over 30 years, that ignored money becomes hundreds of thousands of dollars. With compound growth, it becomes close to $1 million. $1 million lost simply because you didn't read the benefits portal. And here's the deeper layer most people never think about. Your job doesn't just give you money. It gives you credibility, stability, and optionality. Credibility means banks trust you. Landlords approve you. Lenders say yes. Doors open because you look reliable on paper. Stability means you can take calculated risks because your bills are covered. You can invest aggressively. You can buy property. You can build something on the side without panic. Optionality means choices. The ability to walk away, the ability to switch paths, the ability to say no. That's real freedom. Freedom doesn't come from quitting your job randomly. Freedom comes from using your job to build assets until the job becomes optional. So the smart move isn't rebellion. It's strategy. You stay employed. You extract every benefit. You automate your investing. You keep your lifestyle controlled. You deploy your money into assets that produce income. You build quietly while everyone else complains loudly. And one day you wake up and realize something strange happened. You're not dependent on your job anymore. You're leveraging it. They think you work for them. But really, they've been funding you this entire time. Your employer believes they bought your hours. Meanwhile, you used their salary to buy freedom. That's the shift. That's the game. And once you see your job as an investor instead of a cage, you'll never treat your paycheck the same way again. Because this is the part nobody tells you when you're young and frustrated and scrolling through videos about escaping the rat race. Because the loudest voices online love selling you the fantasy of burning everything down and quitting tomorrow. But they never explain where the capital comes from. They never explain who funds the transition. They never explain how you survive long enough for investments to actually grow. And without capital, every dream quietly suffocates before it even starts. Dreams don't die because people are lazy. Dreams die because people run out of money. And money is oxygen. So if oxygen is money, then your employer is the oxygen tank. And throwing it away before you have another source isn't brave, it's reckless. The smarter move is almost boring. It's quiet. It's invisible. It's strategic. You stay employed and you treat that paycheck like fuel shipments arriving every 2 weeks. And instead of lighting that fuel on fire with random spending, you store it, direct it, deploy it like a general planning a campaign. Because wealth isn't built with excitement. It's built with systems. Let's talk systems. The difference between people who accidentally stay broke and people who accidentally get rich usually comes down to one thing that sounds stupidly simple. Automation. Not motivation. Not willpower. Not grinding 16 hours a day. Automation. Because willpower fades when you're tired. Systems don't. So the moment your paycheck lands, before you even see it, money should already be moving. Retirement contributions automatically deducted. HSA automatically funded. Brokerage transfers automatic. Savings automatic. Bills automatic. Investing automatic. You shouldn't have to decide every month. Decisions create friction. Friction creates procrastination. Procrastination kills wealth. Remove yourself from the process. Make it mechanical. Make it boring. Because boring is profitable. Every dollar that touches your checking account feels spendable. Every dollar that bypasses it feels untouchable. That tiny psychological difference is everything. Rich people don't rely on discipline. They design environments where discipline isn't required. So when you get a raise, don't celebrate by upgrading your life. Celebrate by upgrading your investments. Because lifestyle inflation is the silent killer of financial progress. Most people get a $5,000 raise and somehow still feel broke 6 months later. The money didn't disappear. It just got absorbed. Slightly nicer restaurants. Slightly nicer car. Slightly nicer apartment. Death by 1,000 tiny upgrades. But if you redirect that raise straight into assets before you ever feel it, your life stays the same while your future changes dramatically. That gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is freedom. Protect it like your life depends on it. Because it does. Now here's where things start getting interesting, because once you build that gap consistently, you create something most people never experience. Liquidity. Cash that isn't already promised to bills. Cash that can move. Cash that can attack opportunities. And opportunities always show up for the prepared, never for the desperate. When the market crashes and everyone is scared, the prepared buy assets at discounts. When real estate dips and sellers panic, the prepared make offers. When someone needs a partner for a business, the prepared say yes. Everyone else just watches and says, "Must be nice." It's not luck. It's liquidity. And liquidity only exists because someone treated their salary like investment capital instead of spending money. Let me paint you a picture. Year 1, you're not rich, you're just intentional. You capture every benefit. You take the match. You fund the HSA. You save a little extra. Feels small, almost pointless, but you're laying bricks. Year 3, you're slightly more skilled because you used the education benefits. That skill turns into a raise or a better job. Now your income increases, but your lifestyle barely moves. The gap widens. More bricks. Year 5, you look up and realize you've stacked $30,000 or $40,000 without feeling like you sacrificed much. That money becomes your first investment. Maybe index funds. Maybe a small property. Maybe a side project. Now your money starts working while you sleep. That's when the psychology shifts. Because for the first time in your life, money shows up that you didn't personally work hours for. And that changes you. You stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. By year 7 or 8, your investments are generating real numbers. Hundreds per month. Then thousands. Quietly. Consistently. Meanwhile, you still have your job funding the whole machine. At this stage, something powerful happens that nobody talks about. Fear disappears. Because fear only exists when you have no margin. When you live paycheck to paycheck, everything is terrifying. A bad boss, a surprise bill, a layoff. But when you have assets and cash flow, you're calm. You negotiate better. You take smarter risks. You say no more often. Because you're not desperate anymore. And desperation is expensive. Confidence is profitable. This is the hidden benefit of treating your employer like an investor. They're not just funding your accounts. They're funding your courage. And courage changes your life faster than money ever could. So while everyone else complains that their job is a trap, you quietly flip the script. You show up. You do solid work. You collect the capital. You extract every benefit. You build your assets on the side. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Silently. Strategically. Like a chess player thinking 10 moves ahead. Because one day, without fireworks, without some dramatic resignation speech, you'll open your accounts and realize something strange. Your investments cover your expenses. Your benefits are optional. Your paycheck is just a bonus now. And that's the moment you win. Not when you quit, but when you could quit and simply choose not to. That's freedom. And it didn't come from escaping your job. It came from using your job as the greatest investor you ever had. So stop treating your employer like an ATM. Start treating them like venture capital. Extract everything. Build quietly. Let compound interest do the heavy lifting. And leave only when the math says you're untouchable. Because smart people don't escape the system. They use the system to fund their exit. And if you play it right long enough, your job won't own you. It will have built you. Master Oink. And the strange thing about this whole strategy is that from the outside your life doesn't even look impressive at first. Because while other people are posting upgrades and vacations and shiny proof of success, you are quietly constructing something invisible, something structural, something that doesn't sparkle today but becomes unshakable tomorrow, like pouring concrete foundations underground where nobody claps but everything stable will eventually stand. Because real wealth is not aesthetic in the beginning, it's not Instagrammable, it's not exciting, it's spreadsheets and automatic transfers and boring consistency. And the people who mistake boredom for failure are usually the same ones restarting their financial life every year from zero. You have to fall in love with the quiet phase, the phase where nothing looks different but everything is changing beneath the surface, the phase where discipline compounds even when dollars don't seem to, because that invisible compounding is the seed that later explodes into visible freedom. Most people sabotage themselves because they crave evidence too soon, they want proof after 3 months, they want results after 6, they want lifestyle upgrades immediately, and impatience is the tax they keep paying for never letting their capital breathe long enough to grow. But capital is like a tree, and if you keep digging it up every week to check the roots, you guarantee it never grows tall enough to give you shade. So your job, that thing you complain about every Monday, becomes your watering system, quietly feeding the soil while you pretend it's pointless. And the moment you understand that dynamic, resentment turns into strategy. Because resentment makes you reckless and strategy makes you rich. And those two mindsets lead to completely different lives even when they start with the same salary. The resentful employee spends to cope, while the strategic employee invests to escape. And 10 years later, they look like they lived on different planets even though they sat in the same office. Every paycheck becomes a decision point, a fork in the road where one path leads to temporary comfort and the other leads to permanent leverage. And most people repeatedly choose comfort because the pain of discipline is immediate while the reward is delayed. But if you can tolerate short-term discomfort longer than everyone else, you quietly buy long-term power that almost nobody else ever experiences. Because money isn't just about consumption, money is stored choices, and every dollar saved is a future option you purchased for yourself. And the person with options always wins against the person with obligations, because options create calm and obligations create panic, and panic makes terrible decisions. So while others are financing cars they don't need to impress people they don't like, you are financing your independence without needing anyone's applause. And here's something almost nobody realizes until it's too late, which is that the goal isn't to look wealthy. The goal is to become untouchable. Untouchable means you don't tolerate disrespect because you don't need permission. Untouchable means you don't fear layoffs because your assets pay you. Untouchable means you can walk away from anything that compromises your peace. And peace is the most expensive luxury on earth, yet it's rarely purchased with spending. It's purchased with ownership. Ownership of your time, ownership of your decisions, ownership of your income streams. Your employer accidentally funds all three if you're smart enough to redirect their money instead of consuming it. Because the salary isn't the gift, the leverage is the gift, and leverage only appears when you delay gratification long enough to build momentum. Momentum is where everything changes because once your investments start generating returns that feed themselves, you stop pushing the rock uphill and the rock starts rolling on its own. That's when compounding stops being theory and becomes something you actually feel, like waking up and realizing your accounts grew more in a month than you personally saved. And that moment rewires your brain forever, because you finally understand that money can work harder than you ever could. From there, your job stops being your lifeline and becomes your amplifier, just adding fuel to a machine that's already moving. And that's the subtle psychological shift that separates employees from operators, because employees trade time for money while operators use money to buy time. Time is the real currency, always has been, always will be, and every asset you build is just a machine designed to give you more of it back. So when you invest intelligently, you're not chasing numbers, you're reclaiming hours of your life that you would otherwise sell forever. Each dividend, each rent payment, each interest deposit is literally time being returned to you. Time you can spend learning, creating, resting, traveling, loving, thinking, or simply existing without pressure. And when you look at wealth through that lens, it stops being greedy and starts being deeply human. Because wanting control over your time isn't selfish, it's survival. Nobody dreams of being rich just to stare at a bank account. They dream of being rich so they can finally breathe. And breathing freely requires margin. Margin requires assets. Assets require capital. And capital, whether you admit it or not, is being handed to you every 2 weeks by the very job you think is holding you back. So instead of fighting your employer emotionally, you start exploiting the opportunity logically. You show up, you perform well enough to stay valuable, and then you siphon every available resource into your own ecosystem like a smart operator extracting value from a partnership. Because that's what this really is, not employment, but a partnership where one side unknowingly funds the independence of the other. They think they're buying your labor, but you're actually using their infrastructure to finance your freedom. And the most beautiful part is that you don't need permission to do this, because every benefit they offer is already contractually yours. You're not cheating the system, you're simply reading the rules more carefully than everyone else. And the system quietly rewards people who pay attention. So you pay attention. You read every benefit document. You attend every training. You take every reimbursement. You automate every investment. You waste nothing. Because wasted capital is wasted life energy. And once you see money as life energy stored, you stop treating it casually. Every dollar becomes a tiny soldier working for you, and sending those soldiers into useless battles like impulse purchases starts to feel ridiculous. You want them building fortresses, not disappearing in skirmishes. So you build the fortress slowly, brick by brick, month by month, paycheck by paycheck. And nobody notices, until one day everyone does.